Hey, good evening. It's Wednesday, April 9th, and welcome back to Everyday Talk 24/7. We're talking about our worth and how do we know our true worth. And we've talked about three things that negatively impact our understanding of our worth. We've talked about how other people view us. We've talked about performance, how we grade ourselves on some performance scale, but whether it's imposed on ourselves or imposed by others. But tonight I want to talk about your perception of your worth. Now, it has to do with what people think. It has to do with our understanding of performance. But most significantly, our perception of our worth is probably the most important. And as God's children, what we need to do is to bring our perception of our worth in line with what God's perception of our worth is. And this is significant because if we are not grounded and guided and standing on the rock of God's perception, His truth, then we are indeed on shaky ground. We will be up and down because you and I are up and down. We have good days, we have bad days. In God's eyes, that does not change His perception of our worth. We need to have that same stability. Now we know from the Psalms that we are created with honor and dignity and glory, crowned with those things, as Psalm 8 says. Psalm 139 says that we are fearsomely, awesomely, wonderfully made, with God being involved as we are knit together in the womb. God is involved in that process. That's special. Of course, then sin clouds the picture. Sin gives the devil a foothold and causes us to start craving the attention of other people and looking to other things besides God for worth. But then when God rescues us, now it's a whole new ballgame because Christ is at work. Listen to what Ephesians 2:10 says regarding your worth and my worth. After Paul's described this whole process of being God's enemies and then God rescuing us, making us alive in Jesus, and He saves us not by our works, but by His grace. Then in verse 10 we read this: "For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works which God prepared in advance for us to do." We are God's workmanship. The Greek word there for workmanship, your translation might say masterpiece, it might say handiwork, but the word there in the Greek is poema. It's a work of art. It's a poem that's being written. You and I are being written by the hand of God. Our worth is that. God is the one who gives us worth. And He gives us worth to do things which He has called us to do, which He's already prepared in advance for us to do. So the more I am in line with the things that God has called me to do, the greater sense of worth that I'm going to perceive that. Listen carefully. The more in line I am with doing the things that God has called me to do, the good works that He's prepared in advance for me to do, the more in line I am with that, the more I'm going to be in sync with God, and the more I'm going to be seeing my worth connected to the things that I do because He's given them to me to do. I think one of the great tragedies of our current modern time is that we have allowed everyone but God to frame our worth. And then we kind of look for God to come along and rescue us and take us out of the mess, say it's okay, it doesn't matter. No, Jesus comes and makes us new and gives us a sense of purpose to do his things, to follow his ways. And again, I've got over now 2,200 videos talking about the various things that God has called us to do. But right now, just in summary, God has called us to be people who pursue him, who pursue his righteousness, his kingdom, who are longing, thirsting for the fruit of the Spirit to be in us, to be people who know what love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control is in the face of the struggles we face in everyday life. That's where we find our worth, brothers and sisters, is doing these good works which God has prepared for us to do. But it's dynamic. The vastness and power of God is so great that he gives us every day, in your particular situation or in my particular situation, a chance to deploy the fruit of the Spirit in his way, to obey him in a way that's unique that no one else can do in that moment. And that's where we find worth and purpose. Because ultimately our worth is bound up in what Jesus has done for us. This is why we can boldly go before the throne of grace with confidence, because of what Jesus has done, not because of what we have done. Our perception of our worth needs to be tied to the fact that God is at work in each of us. And the standards of our culture, the performance standards, the approval of other people, we get freaked out about fashion. We get freaked out about the kind of car we drive. We get freaked out about, are we rooting for the right sports team? Or do we listen to the right music? Or do we hang with the right people? Instead of being blown away by the fact that God sends birds to us to bring his joy to us. Your perception of your worth needs to be connected to God's perception, God's reality. That's what rescues us. That's what gives us courage and confidence. Because we're going to have times of being up and being down. Times of where we fail miserably. But in Christ, we are whole and complete, renewed, and being renewed. That's where our worth is. Listen again. Again, love your thoughts, your feedback. Listen again. For we are God's workmanship, God's poema, God's work of art in progress, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. That's our worth. That's where we have stability. That's our hope. Again, love having these thoughts with you. I love the comments and interaction. And Lord willing, we'll talk more about this tomorrow. Thanks so much for being here, and you have a great night. Bye-bye.